So now we have our sphere created and we have our background or the plane or the floor where the sphere is going to bounce. So let's get started by setting up the sphere to squash and stretch, okay? For that, we're just going to add a simple modifier. So click on any of your viewports on the sphere, right? You should have it here in the Modify tab. You should see it selected over here. And let's go to modifiers and parametric deformers. And let's find this stretch right here. So when you do that, you're going to notice that now your sphere seems to have a little bit of an orange box around it. So that means that the modifier is there. Another visual cue is that it's showing up here as a stretch over the sphere node. And now you can see the parameters. The one that we are going to work with is this one here called stretch. So as I click and drag it, I notice the effect that that the modifier has on the sphere, you know, squashing it and stretching it. Okay, so let's put it on 0. Press enter to put it in neutral mode. And before we move on, let me actually see. Yeah, the default is this. Okay, so let me show you what's going to happen first. Let's set I'm going to middle mouse here on the perspective viewport, and I'm going to maximize it here with the toggle button so that we have that. So here's what I want to do. Let's start by setting up the initial keys, and I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm just going to do one bounce and show you how the stretch works and the squash works, and show you how to refine the keys a little bit. So let's set up first our initial starting and ending point of the animation. Okay, so I just middle mouse, use the wheel to zoom back. So make sure that you have everything covered, you know, your whole floor plane, so that you can see from where to where you're going to move the sphere. Now the next question that you have to ask yourself is, how many frames am I going to use? Okay, just keep in mind that in animation you have 24 frames for every second of animation. You know, this concept comes from the 2D animation world. So it will be the equivalent to 24 drawings for every second of animation. Okay, so think about it that way. Now if we translate that into 3D, as we are right now, then that is equivalent to 24 frames. Okay, and the frames you can see down here on the timeline, that tells you how many frames you're seeing, and right now it's set up to 100. So if you see, it goes from 0 to 100. So in our case, I want to only see 1 or 2 seconds. Let's say 2 seconds of animation. So that will be 48 frames. Okay, so if 1 second is 24, then 2 seconds will be 48. So how do we set it up so that we only see 48? Because 48 will be right here. And the only reason I recommend to do this is because it's visually is a little bit easier if you only have the amount of frames that you're going to be working on the timeline. Okay, so let's go to the time configuration. Here is the one that looks like a little clock with a gear, kind of like steampunk. So in this window, let's set the length to 48, okay? And then press OK. And now look at what happened. Now we don't have 100 frames anymore. Now we have 48 frames, okay? So that will help us to set up the initial frame over here, a final frame over here, and then kind of midway, okay? So I'm going to start right now, and this is going to be interesting because I want you to learn something today about filters. Okay, so let's first set the set key option on. You have two options here for animating. You can do the auto key or set key. Well, we get used to things and have more control over when we make changes and such. Let's use set key. That way you have more control. If you don't set the key, it won't stay, so that way you don't accidentally put a key where it shouldn't be. Okay, so on timeline 0 over here, make sure you're on 0. Press that set key button there, and you're gonna notice now we have some colored keys, you know, like a little rectangle box there that tells us that there's a key over there. Okay, then I'm going to move all the way to the very end, and for this simple exercise what I'm going to do is move the sphere to over here. Okay, maybe that last square on the grid from our point of view. Oops, sorry about that. Let's click on the sphere, and you know, kind of somewhere there. Okay, maybe not that close. Let's just put it a little bit more. I'm still with the move tool selected, this one over here. So just grab one handle when it highlights in yellow, not the top, just this one, the green and red for now, X and Y. So somewhere there, I think that is good. And with my time on 48 already set up, I'm gonna set another key. So far we just pretty much, I'm dragging the time slider there. You can play the animation over here in this play button that we're so familiar with. And so far we're just sliding it, right? That's our initial movement pose. Somewhere in between, let's say on frame 24, so for 1 second of animation, I am going to set another key. And right now, because it's going on a straight line, it's not going to do much. But that's going to be our reference for in 1 second, we're going to have one bounce, and then on the next second, we're going to have the second bounce. Okay, so I'm gonna set another key over there on frame 24, so make sure you put your frame 24 and set key. Okay, now you have 3 keys on your timeline: the beginning, the middle, and the end. Okay, so between frames 0 and 24, somewhere here, maybe on 12, I'm going to move up my sphere so that it starts looking, instead of going on a straight line, so that it's going up and down as in a bounce. Okay, so let me move here on the viewport, minimize that viewport, and let's use the front one for reference. Okay, so let's say the sphere moves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 5 grid squares up on frame 12. So make sure while you're there on frame 12, move your sphere up on the front view, right? And I have it selected because see that now it's highlighted in red, and press the set key. Okay, now you're gonna see a new key here on frame 12. Let's see what we just did. You know, we start, the sphere starts, goes up, that's the key we just set, and goes down, and then slides all the way back because we haven't set up our second bounce. Okay, so let's say I don't know, maybe on frame 34 or 35, maybe let's make it on 35. Let's move the sphere up. You can do it if you're trying to do a look of constant movement, then you want to do the same amount of units that you use on frame 12, where you kind of put it up 5 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Was it 5 or 4? Let me double check. I lost my train of thought there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. So on frame 35, I'm going to once again go to the move tool over here and move it 5 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, 5 squares, and set a key. Okay, if you're following the principle of deceleration, right, the real world physics, what will happen is that as the ball continue bouncing over space, it will look shorter, right? The bounces will be shorter, so you can use the grid as reference for that. You know, maybe the next bounce goes only 4.5 squares. So the next bounce could be there, and then on the next bounce you make it you know, lower, exponentially going lower until the sphere loses momentum. Okay, excellent. So let's take a look. Let's play, and now our sphere looks like it's going up and down. It looks very linear in movement, so it's somehow constant movement. So we have a good start over here, And let me go maximize with that viewport selected, and you can middle mouse on it and go to here in the viewport toggle so that you get the up and down movement. And I just want you to take a look at the sphere, you know, the poles, or the, you know, the top and bottom areas of the sphere where everything kind of converges to. Uh, they're always facing the same in the same direction, right? It's always facing up. It's always facing up. It's almost like it doesn't rotate, it doesn't move, or, you know, doesn't do anything else, just kind of goes up and down. If you want to do this as a character, that will be a good idea, because, you know, as a character, we, you know, people most of the time spend their, you know, their position on Earth with the head up, right? Except when we sleep, when we hang from a tree, you know, there's exceptions, but the normal placement of a person will be with the head up, right? When we walk, our heads are up. When we run, heads are up. And when we sit down to eat, or sit down to do read or something, our heads are above, right? So it's a normal position, right? So you can do characterization on your animation by by following rules that apply to people, and that's one of them. However, if you're gonna do like a regular bouncing ball, something, an inanimate object, and we're just testing physics, um, we will need to rotate that, okay? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep it simple. So I'm going to rotate now my my sphere. So I'm going to go to the sphere over here. So remember, I'm here in the Modify tab. Just click on your sphere. And the next tool we're going to use is this one here. Select and rotate, the one that looks like a little circle with the arrow. And I'm going to start with the normal regular position there, but as the sphere goes up, I want to put it horizontal as it goes, and the top pole or axis goes, now then it's going to be to the side. So I'm just going to manually just kind of do it this way, okay? On frame 12, I'm going to put it horizontal and set a key. So I'm going to go back and see what happens. Pay close attention to the top node, you know, the top side. Now it starts rotating, so it's beautiful. Now it looks a little bit more, you know, less rigid, a little bit more like what could happen. And you could do rotation on other axes. I'm just going to show you here on this axis so that you can get the idea, okay? And then as it goes down, what I want is that node, this part over here, to touch ground instead of being kind of flying there. Sorry about that. Back on the sphere. So I'm going to change that position of the sphere to be like this, -180, okay? And that's on frame 24, and press key. So let's see what happens now. We start, it kind of rotates and curves and goes down, perfect, cannonball, and there you go. That's, my daughter loves saying that. So then again, we're going to create the same, but this time we're going to make our sphere over here to go in the opposite direction, right? So let's see. I think it's gonna have to be 2 revolutions. So let's see. Negative, and I'm looking at the number down there on the z-axis. 280, 280, 280, 280, 280, 280, 280, or 260, 260, I'm sorry. Yeah, let's leave it there. Let's see how that looks. So set key. So let's see if that follows the movement I want. Let's take a look at the top node, and I want it to finish horizontal. Perfect. So you see now that top node goes to the side and then ends up facing the right side. So it kind of follows like inversion. It inverts the placement. Perfect. Then as it goes down, I want it to go with this side oops, I took the other axis. There you go. And I want it to be, then I'm clicking and dragging, like about 180, negative 180. Let's set a key over there on 48. And let's test it. Let's see if it needs another revolution. I don't think it does, but let's see. It goes, all I want to do is make sure this side of the sphere faces down as it falls down, okay? So let's see. Nope, we need it a little bit more. Okay. Needed one more revolution. Let's do it. So I did it a negative 180 about. And I'm still on 48. Set key. So go back, look at it. Let's go back to frame 35. Let's drag it, and now it goes down perfect. That's what we wanted. That top note stays there. Perfect. And this will be, you know, that now you have. Let me unclick, so deselect everything, and kind of take a look. So it's coming along. You know, now we have a little bit of rotation that it makes it look a little bit less rigid, right? And goes down, and then goes up, and goes on. Beautiful. Excellent. So the next thing we're going to do is create that squash and stretch, okay? And let me show you ahead of, before we move on, something that you will find that it will happen to you a few times. So now if it does happen, you know how to fix it. As you're working with your keys, you're going to say, oh, well, my keys don't stay put when I put them. So when, you know, I set my keys down, and all of a sudden they disappear when I replay the animation. So let me show you one thing that you have to do. Go on filters over here. And when that tells you what, when you're setting keys on animation, which attributes you are keying for, right? Keying on. If you notice, we have been putting position keys that are staying. We're doing rotation. We haven't done scale. But there's one called modifiers. Since we have a modifier added to our sphere, we need to turn that one on, okay? So if you notice that your keys are not staying, you place the keys and they don't stay, check your filters and double check that that you are actually setting keys for your whatever it is that you're working on. If you're not sure, just click all, and it will produce more keys, and it ultimately is, you know, you want to let fewer keys to calculate. But for a short animation like this, it will help you understand what is it that that needs to be done to fix the problem. Okay, so once I have modifiers on, I'm going to click that option and close that option box. And now on the stretch modifier, I'm going to make it squash. Okay, maybe to have a -1. That way it's easy to remember. Let's put it -1. Perfect. And then on frame 0, I'm going to start with the sphere squashed already, and I'm going to set a key. Okay. I'm going to go back then on frame 12, and I'm going to kind of pretend that the sphere is normal or regular shape when it's at the highest position. So I'm going to change that stretch attribute to 0. And on frame 12, right, we're still there, set a key. Let's see what happened there. We start squashed and then goes to normal shape. Notice that now you have your red little corners highlighted here. That's telling you that you're putting keys on those attributes, okay? So let's say that as the sphere goes down, it gets squashed again, and we said, what was it, -1, perfect. And set a key on frame 24. And then as it goes up on frame 35, let's make it go back to normal. So let's set it to 0. That was the value for no changes on it. Set a key. And on our final ones, it goes down, so it touches down, so that will be a squash, right? So let's make it -1. Press enter, and let's set a key. Beautiful. Let's play it. Let's see how it's looking. So it looks like it squashes when it comes down, right? And as it goes up, then you're going to notice that it goes back to normal shape, which is what we wanted. Okay, so the initial animation settings are there. Notice that there's a big gap now as we work with the stretch from the sphere to the ground. That will be noticeable, especially if you add lights with shadows. So an easy fix that you can do is just go on those keys, go to the move tool, and go on that key 0, and just move the sphere down and set that key again. Okay. So then you go up to 12, frame 12, it's in the air. On frame 24, it touches ground again. So it's supposed to touch ground again. So move it down. You can refine it as much as you want. And then as it goes up again, it's okay. And then comes down and it's again on the air. So let's just move it down a little bit. And you can visually, zoom in a little bit more to edit it by using the wheel. And on frame 48, set a key. So let's go back. Let's see on frame 0. Perfect. You see that now it touches ground, goes up, touches ground entirely, goes up, touches ground entirely, and that's where it stays, right? Perfect. So now you have set up the stretch modifier. We have set our initial bounce and rotation, including rotation. So when we come back, we're going to tweak a little bit more the movement, and we're going to create a final